All right, everybody. Thank you so much. As we had a quick little break and came back in, thank you for your patience. I'm going to now call this special meeting of the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees to order. And we'll start once again with our roll call. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam President. Excuse me, Trustee, no. President Taylor.
Yes, I'm here.
Vice President Nicolette. I am here. I am here. Trustee Church. Here. Trustee Mayberry. Here. Trustee Rodriguez. Here. Trustee Smith. Here. Student Representative Caden Custer. Here. Yes. We have a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We're going to go to our Pledge of Allegiance. Let's have Miss Nora lead us in the pledge, if you would.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I thought we better catch you while we could, because don't know how many more meetings you'll be here, but it's good, certainly good to. I mean, I'm not trying to say anything, but we love to have you. You come anytime. But yeah, I wanted to go ahead and do that. So let's jump into action to adopt the agenda. Public comment on action to adopt the agenda? Okay, yes, please.
John Eppolito.
My name is John Eppolito, and I'm with Protect Nevada Children. And I would like to comment on this item because of a while back, I guess President Taylor and the superintendent decided that they didn't want the public to speak at the beginning of the meeting anymore. So initial public comments, I've been coming to these meetings for 12 years. I've never seen I've never seen initial public comments removed from the meeting until President Taylor and Superintendent McNeil thought it was a good idea. There was at least 2 school board other members that didn't think it was a good idea, but it doesn't matter. So now a parent, if they want to talk about something that's not on the agenda, they can, at the very end of the meeting, sometime between, let's say 4:30 and 12 o'clock midnight. It's ridiculous what you did. You've silenced the parents, not just the Trump mob, as your flyer said, Angie, but you've silenced all of the parents. If a parent wants to come in here and talk about anything, they have to wait till the very end of the meeting, and it's wrong. You need to bring back the initial public comments, please. Hopefully the new superintendents are watching, and they'll put a push on this if President Taylor won't. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eppolito. I'm going to do it was on the agenda, so that was appropriate. That was on the agenda. I'm just going to again a point of clarification, which is generally the only time we'll respond. First of all, that mail piece was not sent out by my campaign. Number one. Number two, there were not 2 trustees who came to ask for that to be reconsidered as an agenda item. There was only 1, because if there are 2 trustees, according to board policy, it would be on the agenda. And so I want to make the record reflect clearly we are not in violation of board policy. There was 1. Any other public comment on adopting the agenda?
No.
Okay. All righty. So now I'm looking for a motion if it is the pleasure of the board to to approve the agenda. Okay. Well, I heard the so first from Clerk Manello, seconded by Trustee Rodriguez. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Opposition?
Nay.
Let the record show it is 6-1. The motion carries. Okay, we'll jump right into the reason we are here for our special meeting, and I see our presenters are already in place. This is agenda item 2.01, discussion and possible action to select a superintendent of schools for the Washoe County School District from among the following 5 finalists: Ms. Joan Ebert, Dr. Susan Infield, Dr. Sherelle Hobbs, Dr. Sean Luxer, and Dr. Caprice Young. As part of the discussion, the board may consider the character, competence, or alleged misconduct of Ms. Joan Ebert, Dr. Susan Infield, Dr. Sherelle Hobbs, Dr. Sean Luxer, and Dr. Caprice Young. And this is for possible action. We do have presenters. We'll turn it over to, who's going to go first? Miss Ellison. Turn it over to Miss Ellison, and then we also, of course, have Dr. Bill Bryan and Nora Behrens.
Behrens.
Behrens. Okay, I got it right. I got it. Nora Behrens from the Bryan Group. Ms. Ellison.
Good afternoon, trustees. Emily Ellison again for the record. I'm going to turn it over in just a moment to Dr. Bryan, who's going to give an overview of the process that we've embarked upon during this search. But I just wanted to say congratulations. You're at the second to last step. When Dr. McNeil announced her retirement last fall, I know that we were all anxious about what this process would look like and who our candidates would be and all of those things. And so just wanted to congratulate you for getting across the, mostly across the finish line. And Bill and I are excited too. We sat down up here before the pledge. So I'll turn it over to him. He can talk a little bit about, again, the process that was utilized to identify these candidates.
All right. Thank you. For the record, Bill Bryan. Been a long journey, but I'll make the overview very short. We started back in December to get this process rolling, and the first thing that you're always looking for is to identify what are the criteria by which you're going to evaluate the person that you're looking for, to make sure that they fit not just the current needs, but the future needs as well. And the board, in its wisdom, had only two criteria to get us rolling. One was somebody had to have a master's and a nexus to education, which means a real good connection to education. That ended up helping in the recruiting process, because as we were creating more detailed data, we started the recruitment, and we also look for non-traditional people. And you will see among our 5 candidates that there's some very different backgrounds in that. So we spent time getting data. Also in parallel, we created a search advisory group that came from people who wanted to be on it, over 370 or so people. And we ended up picking a dozen students and 30-some adults, community members as part of the process. And they knew that they were also helping. They were getting educated in it, but also helping us to keep the right perspective in terms of what's important to Washoe. So that went well. We got our criteria. We ended up with 36 people applying, which was a pretty good number given the current situation in the marketplace. But 16 we immediately dropped because they hadn't completed all the requirements. And we had pretty stiff requirements in terms of what they had to submit, in terms of their background information, references, and so forth. That brought us down to 20. Then we started further screening in terms of their written package of information. From there, we went to short interviews, and from there, we came down to the long interviews. And in the long interview process, we identified 5, and these are the candidates you have now. And we say long interview, we mean long. In some cases, we went 6 to 7 hours in terms of getting it started, doing the interviews, and then doing all the scoring afterwards. And we used a unique technique called guided storytelling, so people are telling stories, which is the best way to see what they have, what they bring to the table, because the only predictor of future performance is past performance. So once we had done that, we were pretty much on our way to deciding, what are the activities that we're going to use to give you a look at these candidates. And so we, posted everything in terms of what was available for people. I'm not going to go any more into the criteria creation, but it really brought us down to the current in the last few weeks. We did an interview with storytelling of the candidates that people could watch and you saw. We then went to all the meet and greet activities, the focus groups, the meals, the tours, and so forth. And that brings us to this point. Because right after that, or in parallel, we also had a survey. And in the survey, it was asking people, please, do your due diligence, take time, go online, look at all this wonderful information, the recordings, the written materials, and so forth. And let us know, do you think this person of the 5 is a great fit for the organization, for Washoe, a good fit, a so-so fit, or not a fit? And that information was just recently passed on to you. So that's that's where we are today, at a terrific decision point with 5 great candidates, and you're ready to go. We can, Nora and I can back off at this point.
Well, we appreciate that, Dr. Bryan. And again, we've expressed this before, but I will say this again, that on behalf of the Board of Trustees, we appreciate your work. Your diligence has been a very extensive process. Again, untraditional for those of us who've been in executive searches at this level before. So sometimes it got a little because it was so different. Mm-hmm. It was so different. But these were different times, and I believe that's why the board landed on your group and your process. You talked about the process being different, and so we've benefited from your leadership in it, and how you've conducted it and moved forward. And I thank you for intentionally creating opportunities for the public to be involved. I mean, the board mentioned it early on in the process that we thought that was important. So everything from the various surveys, a couple of different times for that, right. And then focus groups if people didn't get to be on the SAG. That was there to help you. Right. And then additionally, the really open forums during the meet and greets, people could come and ask questions. You don't get to see that too often, when you can really get a chance to hear from members of the public, members from the community, from parents, from students, from teachers and other staff members, as well as the leadership team. So I thank you. I thank you for that. It is time for us to deliberate, but before we do, I think it's really important to hear public comment. We've received some emails. We have a lot of public comment in the surveys. We had 381 respondents. And thank you for summarizing that. It made it so that we could all get through it today or late last night, whenever it was that we got it. And we've received emails, some in public comment and some in direct emails. And I think there may be some here today that want to share public comment as well. So why don't we go to public comment, and then we'll bring it back here to the board and talk about how we'll move forward in the process.
Valerie Fiannaca.
Welcome, Ms. Fiannaca.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm welcome again. I would encourage you to vote for Dr. Cheryl Hobbs. I watched as much publicly available video as possible, read all the written info available to me, and found her to be the most sincere and relatable of all the candidates. I like that she thinks a diploma should be earned or it's worthless. Please do not choose Ms. Joan Ebert. She has contributed in large part to the failure of the Nevada school system. We don't want more of the same bad policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fiannaca. And for the record, you will always be welcome.
Thank you.
Katie Simon Holland.
Former President Holland, welcome.
Thank you. And good afternoon. And for the record, Katie Simon Holland. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you to each of you, every one of you, for all the work you do for the children and families of Washoe County. And thank you to the Bryan Group for a very professional and comprehensive process. Contrary to some of the comments that have been made in this forum, the Washoe County School District is not the last in the nation and does much better than the state of Nevada in virtually every category. In fact, in many cases, the Washoe County School District is among the top in the nation in important aspects like advanced placement performance and constitutional knowledge, where Reno High School competed yesterday in the top 12 high schools nationally. And we have among the lowest number of administrators per student and the lowest cost per student nationally. I mention these things to focus our attention on continuing to build on the strengths while addressing our weaknesses in the selection of the next superintendent. I am here to give my wholehearted support to your selection of Dr. Susan Enfield as the next superintendent. In addition to being named by Ed Week as one of the most respected superintendents in the United States, she has the most successful experience and the most extensive experience among your finalists as a public school superintendent. She is extremely bright, personable, transparent, competent, well-liked in her district, effective, and innovative. I strongly support Dr. Susan Enfield for the next superintendent of Washoe County School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simon Holland.
Phil Kaiser.
Welcome, Mr. Kaiser.
Thank you. I'm Phil Kaiser. I'm a teacher in the Washoe County School District and the president of the Washoe Education Association. I was also on the advisory group, and I have spent many, many hours going through the written materials, and I just want to commend the board for the process. I mean, it was very extensive. It was very inclusive in my view, from the initial surveys to the Zoom interviews to the guided storytelling to the final evaluation. Last week I was at Worcester High for the in-person question and answer periods. I think it all informed your choices, and I think that you have some good choices to make. I was particularly pleased that there was a specific student group that had time, both formal and informal time, and you had both formal and informal time to listen to the candidates. As a group, we at the Washoe Education Association support Dr. Susan Enfield because of her extensive experience as a superintendent, current experience as a superintendent going through COVID, which has been hell the last 2 years. She's endured that with the rest of us, and I think that informs her policy making. I think that she is a collaborative leader. I think that she is someone who has experience reaching out to stakeholders. I loved her soup with the soup, getting out to the school sites and listening, and I just would support her. Thank you.
Thank you, President Kaiser.
James Bentham.
Welcome, Mr. Bentham.
James M. Bentham for the record, Washoe County taxpayer. Wish to address the board, and hopefully candidates will be watching and listening. I want to say that I support Dr. Hobbs, and I oppose Joan Ebert.
Thank you.
Because of the lack of academic performance in Nevada. I believe that students and families want a change, an increase in academic standards and learning by all students. I agree that many students have been outstanding in their performance, but many have failed. We can look at past performance and set goals for the future superintendent, goals that are important. One of these is the main focus, is education. In the handout I passed out, Reno Gazette Journal, 2016, Nevada's worst on ACT scores. And then on the next handout, Washoe County Schools Examiner, page 2, has a chart of academic performance decreasing since 2015. Even though there are many successful students, there is room for much improvement, especially on ACT scores and academics. Also, we want a superintendent that will be able to work with a new board. We've had 3 trustees in the last year or 2 resign. We have a superintendent that's resigned. On the next page of the handout, President Taylor's running for political office. So there'll be many changes, and we need a superintendent that will be able to work with a new board starting this next year. So I would request that the board look at the main focus, academic standards, and increasing those, and pick Dr. Hobbs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bentham.
Bruce Parks.
Welcome, Chairman Parks.
In this capacity, I'm a private citizen, just an ordinary taxpayer.
Okay, well, welcome, Taxpayer Parks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Tough choice deciding who you're going to have as a superintendent. I understand that. In the past, our superintendents have been major letdowns, be the way I would characterize it. I could use different language, but that serves the purpose. Not just the superintendent, but other administrators, trustees. The past is behind us. We're looking at moving forward. Moving forward. One of the things that I hope the incoming superintendent will address is the bloat of administrators in the Washoe County School District, as exemplified by the fact that our current superintendent has 5 district superintendents. Now, one of the largest school districts in the country, Los Angeles Unified, second only to New York, but they're closer. So I'll use them for an example. They have almost 1 million students in Los Angeles Unified School District. You know how many superintendents or district superintendents their main superintendent has? 6. Why do we have 5? It makes no sense. And if you look at the salary structure of those district superintendents, you're going to have to talk long and hard before you convince me there's no bloat in our current administration structure. I know that there is. You can go to Transparent Nevada and look at the salary structures for Washoe County School District. You go through over 300 names of administrators before you get to the name of one teacher. Now, that's an upside-down system by anybody's standard. I would also hope that whoever assumes that position has as their primary focus academic standards, because you can cherry pick all the data that you want. But the fact remains, Nevada is still last in the nation for education, and Washoe County School District is right in the midst of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Melanie Sutton.
Welcome, Ms. Sutton.
Good afternoon. I'd like to echo what Bruce had to say. I agree with that. I don't know why all the focus on pronouns and this and that. I think the focus, and I hope you all agree, and I think you all do, is the importance of our children, and that should be our number one priority. So academic excellence. What about all the violence and the drug use that's going on in our schools? That should be number one above your pronouns and everything else. So that's just what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sutton.
Pablo Nava Duran.
Welcome, Mr. Duran.
Here we go. I'm going to name all 5 publicly. Here we go. So all 5 publicly, I'm going to start at the bottom. So the bottom one is Julian Herb. So he lives at number 5 because since he's from the state superintendent, he done like a great job for keeping up of all 17 Nevada districts. But there are the cons, but there recently that they take no action for Clark County's school district. But I think Washoe County is the best school district in Nevada right now. And we're not far worse than Clark County because Clark County is the worst. And the reason why Nevada is they rank 49 in education because of Clark County. So I'm brand of Clark County school districts, and I think the superintendent needs to be fired. And number 4 is John Luxer. I know she's from San Diego, such as you do, Jeff, so that's a great opportunity. I think he's done a great job for keeping it up. And he's president superintendent at Riverside Education School District. I don't know what the name is. So he's currently an associate professor at Arizona State University, and he did teach a critical race theory at master graduate level. But the problem is he doesn't know the critical race theory in K-12, and also too politically, so far away. So number 3, Christy Young. She's from Los Angeles. And I like her. I think she's a best, maybe a best fit for the next Washoe County School District. For next superintendent, he have a candidate for diverse neighborhood to represent my student. Look it up, and also the con is she changed her short tenure, changed her job a lot. So not a good fit if we want to keep a long-term superintendent. So number 2 is Charlene Hubbs. Number 2, from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She's doing an awesome job for doing Fort Lauderdale. She's the most caring person I ever see. She cares about students and parents. So he do a little bit about personal freedom and all kinds of stuff. So for the colonies, he traveled across the country. Also, he did criticize their government for being too politically in the school. So I think like if you selected, you get out of Florida and move to Nevada. So Florida's not the best place for them. So the first one is Shirley Herfield. She's the best candidate for the superintendent. She's from Seattle, and her superintendent, I think that's Shirley Herfield is my top choice for all of it. So if a top 2 or top 3, that could be John, Sarah, and Hoff, and Susan Herfield. So here we go. And have a nice day. Good luck with that. You have 1 vote.
Thank you, Mr. Duran.
John Eppolito.
Welcome back, Mr. Eppolito.
Can't find it. I just typed it out. My name is John Eppolito, and I'm with Protect Nevada Children, and I'm trying to find my comments.
Would you like us to go?
Yeah, go
see
to
if
someone else.
We can do that and give you
someone
time?
else on it, JJ.
If there's someone else on, we can do that.
Shannon Coley.
Welcome, Ms. Coley.
Hi. I wasn't going to speak, but I just wanted to endorse Cheryl Hobbs. I thought she was very personable, really wants to be involved with the community, so I'm on her side. Also, I'm worried about Dr. Enfield because her greatest asset, she kept saying, was talking about restorative justice. And the local papers claimed that she was driving teachers away. So we all know what's going on in Vegas and what's going on around the country with restorative justice and putting kids that are disruptive back in the classroom. I think it's a problem. And if that is her biggest accomplishment, that she really wants you guys to know that she did, and putting kids back in the classroom, and look at Vegas. I don't want to be Vegas. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Coley.
John Eppolito.
Are you good, Mr. Eppolito?
I'm good. Okay. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. My name is John Eppolito, and you can find 1,500 of us on Facebook at Protect Nevada Children. Angie, I would like to mention something that you just said a minute ago on the initial public comments. Of course, Trustee Church was against that, as was everybody in the audience that spoke. As I recall at that meeting, but maybe I misheard, Trustee Nicolette said something like, quote, "I like hearing initial public comments." Could have been Ellen Minetto, but I believe it was Nicolette. So maybe I was wrong, but that's what I heard. And it probably didn't go through the official process. President Taylor, please don't interrupt me because I'm going to get to the point. I know you like to do that. I wanted to talk for a moment about Spencer, a high school student from McQueen High who came spoke to this board shortly after school started with his story. Spencer, in his AP U.S. History class, it wasn't AP, it was just U.S. History, the first day of school, his teacher informed the class that she was going to focus on BLM and LGBTQ issues. Spencer didn't like that. I don't know exactly what he tried, but he came in here and talked to this board. A couple days after the first day of school, Spencer dropped out of school, mostly because of that U.S. history teacher. Also, at the very beginning of school, there were a lot of issues that came up, mostly around LGBTQ in middle school and elementary school. Not as many in high school. There was 1 or 2 in high school. All of those things are posted on our Facebook page, Protect Nevada Children. Unfortunately, I feel, and many others feel, like conservative students like Spencer and Christian students in elementary school whose parents are trying to teach them values that are in direct conflict with what many of our teachers are pushing are not really welcome in all Washoe County School District classrooms. And that is a huge problem. And I think the superintendent we have and Angie Taylor have been pushing it and allowing it to happen for a long time. One or two of you will speak up now and then against it, but nothing ever changes. I went to Worcester and I heard all the superintendent candidates speak. I felt the only candidate, and the reason I feel this is because what Dr. Hobbs said was, and I'm paraphrasing, I didn't write it down, she wants teachers to focus on education, not values, ideas, beliefs. We have gotten way too far away from educating children and way too close to putting our far left ideas into their heads. And it's time to get back to educating children. And I believe Dr. Hobbs is the candidate for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eppolito.
The board received emails from Joe Morabito, Bobby Onteo, and Nikki Berman.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for all that came to give your public comment, and for those who sent it in, and for those 381 that participated in the survey. We'll bring it back here to the board table for deliberation. And just before we do, I want to just review a little bit so everyone will know the process that we will follow. I've shared this with the board and had a conversation with council that we're going to align this pretty much as we do when we select a trustee, so we stay consistent in the manner that we've done. And again, this is, I've had conversations with legal counsel as well as with Dr. Bryan. So just as a review so that the public will know what we will, we're going to have open discussion now that we've had public comment. Again, thank you. Going to have open discussion. And typically during this time, we're going to ask each trustee to share their thoughts on where we are, including our student trustee, Caden. We certainly want to hear from you, sir. And just as we typically do when we are appointing a trustee, which some of you mentioned we did 3 times this past year, so we ought to be pretty darn good at it. Although I guess you haven't done it yet, Adam, because you were the 3rd one. So, but everyone else, you've been through the process, so you've been through it. Just ask people. Certainly, let's point out the things that we think are necessary, but to the extent that we can, let's try to focus on the positives of each more than the negatives. To the extent that we can, these folks have put themselves out there. To a very high level of public scrutiny. Again, this is what I've asked during the trustee selection process, so this is all in alignment. And then always, I'm just asking everyone to be respectful and encouraging, and even those we end up not voting for. During that time, we're going to ask, hopefully each trustee will share their thoughts. And then after deliberations, we will have a straw poll. Council has reminded me, do not use ballot. It's not what we do. I will not use the word ballot. We will have a straw poll that JJ will distribute to each of us. And each of us will select one candidate. Typically, when we're selecting a trustee, we'll do 2 or 3 because we're narrowing them down to finalists. Well, we already have finalists. That work has already been done by the Bryan Group. So we're gonna everyone will, you're right, put a check mark by your first choice only. I talked about that, and then council and JJ will count. We'll just have a quick break, maybe 5 minutes, just real quick, as they count them, put them together, and then those ballots will be read aloud. There's no such thing as a secret ballot in this process, and so JJ will do as she does. She'll say the trustee and whomever the trustee voted for, and go around, and we'll see, and then she'll give us the totals, and then the trustees will deliberate, and then decide upon the next step. That next step could be another straw poll. Could be a motion, depending upon the desire of the board, and we'll let that go forth based upon where we land at that point. And then hopefully, at the end, we'll end up with the motion of some sort or another. That's not hopefully. We'll end up with the motions in one way or another. And then if there is a motion to extend an offer, and if that motion is approved by a majority of the board, and then we will go to the next agenda item 2.02, and Ms. Ellison will take us through the contract. So that's the process. Again, same process we've followed in selecting trustees, but I wanted at least the public to know what to expect as we go forward. So that being said, we'll bring it back here for conversation, deliberation, and Trustee Smith, your light is on, so I will go directly to you.
It is. Thank you, Madam President. This is an outstanding day. The first bit of feedback that I wanted to provide was to the Bryan Group. A very close second to all the feedback that I heard from the community was also around how grateful they were for this process. I don't believe that there has ever been a superintendent search that had so many layers of opportunity for feedback, and that absolutely captures the spirit of what we're trying to do by bringing in all the voices to this decision. So thank you so much for being a guide. With that said, I very much look forward to this dialogue among my colleagues, and so I share the following thoughts just to give a bit of a snapshot of where I'm leaning at the moment, but I look forward to also learning your thoughts and having a dialogue. So Dr. Cheryl Hobbs, incredibly warm. I mean, that's the one word that rises to the top. She is warm, she is student-centered, and her tenacity in seeking out change was very, very admirable. For Dr. Caprice Young, I loved her ability to see possibilities and innovative options. When I had my breakfast with her, I told her I described that through listening to her and getting to know her and reading about her history, where some people might see blue or green, she saw teal. And I loved that. I loved her ability to see options and innovation. For State Superintendent Joan Ebert, her knowledge of Nevada is fantastic. Her understanding of the legislative system is incredibly impressive, and I really felt her personal commitment to public education with her personal story all the way up to being our state superintendent. For Dr. San Luxer, he was incredibly intelligent. His grasp of innovative and emerging educational trends was fantastic. And I was also personally impressed and moved by his commitment to education, not just in the U.S., but around the world. So I am deeply grateful for all of them in this process. There is, though, a finalist that emerges for me at this moment in the conversation, and that is my belief that Dr. Susan Enfield is where I'm leaning at this moment. The Bryan Group, in their great wisdom, brought us through that fantastic opportunity to develop roles and competencies, data-based. We pulled in the community. We identified what those roles and competencies were, and when I evaluate all of them, Dr. Enfield rises to the top for me. We are on the verge of a new chapter, an exciting new day in the Washoe County School District. And Dr. Enfield's longevity and her previous role and her experience lead me to believe that she would be the best new leader for this amazing new chapter for our district. And those are my thoughts as, of course, we engage in our dialogue.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. Trustee Rodriguez, I see your light.
Yep. Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of echoes. I mean, there's a lot of just really educated, impressive resumes up and down. I'll start with East Coast working West. Dr. Hobbs, I mean, I think Trustee Smith said it perfectly. She's very warm. I had the pleasure of going to Sky Ranch Middle School with her, with Trustee Mayberry, and I mean, just like duck on water, just walked in and just was so happy, and it was just a wonderful person. Sean Lozier, Dr. Lozier, very educated, very direct, very to the point. I can appreciate the candor there, and obviously a great deal of experience. And Dr. Young, she's made some hard choices. She was pretty upfront about that, being able to go into districts that need to have those hard choices done, make cuts where they're needed, and work a budget, and that's pretty impressive there, and her experience with charter schools as well. Superintendent Ebert, Nevadian, that's great. Experienced, educated. I'll kind of leave it at that. And I will say that Dr. Susan Enfield, she does stand out to me. I had the pleasure of having meals with all of them, formal and informal discussions, and she shares a lot of the same things that are important to me that I see. Just one of our public comments, mentioning an issue with drugs and guns and bullying in schools. Well, I'll add trafficking, and we had a pretty pretty candid conversation about that and her support of law enforcement. She sat there and said that even amongst her own constituents in Washington that she stood for law enforcement. There's a place for them. And her and I share that. And I have no doubt in my mind that she will come here and support our police department and become more progressive, proactive. Her experience working with state legislators in Washington, she obviously has very strong ties and relationships, and I know she'll bring that to Nevada as well. So that's something that stood out and is important to me because we're going to need that come next session. Our per pupil funding is frankly ridiculous, and I know she'll address that. And just the numerous amount of emails, text messages, support just from staff and community alike, there's a lot of support for her. Her name does stand out amongst my emails. And I like her longevity, too, with the district that she's currently at, 10 years. I mean, she's had one employer, and that, to me, is important. I do look at the other candidates to see multiple employers. Dr. Susan Enfield, she has one, and that says something to me as well. So we need that. I believe we need that here. Her soup of the soup, phenomenal. I think this is kind of bold, her open door to the community monthly. Just come in, walk in, and chit chat. I think that's a pretty bold move, and I think that's awesome because I know there's community that sit there and say we want transparency. Well, I think Dr. Susan Enfield will give that to the community.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez. Trustee Church, see your light, sir.
Thank you. I guess now's a good time. Be the third one out of the gate. Been an interesting, exciting process, and I almost, not counting our superintendent that we have today, when you look at the other out-of-state candidates that we had, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, however long, 4 years ago, where were these folks? These are, I mean, I look at the resumes, I looked at the, when you look at the video, when you look at the initial response, all five just off the chart, incredible people and good people. And I kind of look at it like focusing binoculars. Sometimes your binoculars, you got to focus them down a little bit. And April 20th, the meeting where we got to ask the hard questions, to me, that's where it really came into focus. And it coincides with the Bryan Group survey. To me, Ms. Hobbs and Ms. Enfield came out ahead of the others. The horses started to pull ahead of the others. And I'm assuming all are watching, and I'll offer constructive criticism. Dr. Young, again, just great. It's just those other horses pulled a little bit ahead of her. Mr. Luxer from San Diego, where I'm kind of from, again, everybody, brilliant. I kind of, and if he's listening, I felt a little bit like he ran out the clock on the questions, didn't answer my questions, and also was a little bit academic, talking to us like students, not like trustees. So I think he needs to polish that a little bit, or he's well suited for the academic, but I don't think would be a good fit here. Ms. Ebert, we've talked about, wonderful person, excellent background, although not as a superintendent of any kind of a school system. And again, if it was her versus some of the others that we had before, but again, when the horses started to pull ahead, as reflected in the survey, we get down to Ms. Hobbs, just absolutely sincere, seemed very unifying, etc. And quite frankly, Ms. Hobbs is my choice. I really felt she had the issue of education grasped, that her concentration was on education. She answered every question. She answered them. We almost ran out of questions because she just gave direct answers to them. And I like the answers personally. And now Ms. Enfield, if I'm giving a debate class, if I'm giving a presentation award, she gets the top award for presentation. She was awesome. My only problem, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, we don't know what direction the board's going to take, and is she a fit for the future? That's why I'm going to go with Ms. Hobbs as my first choice, because I really feel she's a good fit. But Ms. Enfield offers tremendous opportunity, but I'm just really, really concerned. Many of the board members here were not on the board 2 years ago. I mean, just things change. So we just don't know. And again, some of the questions, Ms. Enfield was pretty good about answering the questions. I thought she dodged a few of them. She did answer honestly on the issue of equality, equity, social justice, that Ms. Hobbs was answered directly as well. Ms. Hobbs she wanted something more unifying, less divisive, and Ms. Enfield, if I heard right, was more in favor of, it's not CRT, call it whatever you want, but more in favor of that equality, social justice that many in the community oppose. It's a little bit more divisive. So that's the tough decision. And my final comment, Ms. Hobbs concentrated a lot on quality of education. Sadly, I didn't hear that word from a lot of the candidates, hint, hint, in the future, but quality of education is what it's all about. And I will say that I've done my share of study. We are not necessarily at the bottom nationally. We are anywhere from 39th to 50th. We are last in ACT. Washoe County is less than the state average in ACT. In another study, we're just above White Pine County. I think 16 counties. Is there a quiz on this? 17?
17.
Plus us, so 16, yeah. So other studies were above. I mean, you can play with stats all day long. We are absolutely not last in funding, but we are probably in number 40th in funding, so we're at the bottom, but not the very bottom. And so I've done a lot of research, that's my opinion, so I just hate it when both sides play with the stats and don't get it right. But Ms. Hobbs is my first choice, but I understand the promise of Ms. Enfield, but I'm very, very concerned about the fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Church. See your view. I'm gonna just supersede you, Trustee Mayberry, and just go to our student trustee, Caden, since once I look in this direction, then he just got to trump you.
Thank you, President Taylor. First off, I'd also like to say it's been an honor reading about, listening, and interviewing all these candidates. I think they're all exceptionally qualified and accomplished, and I think would be great to lead our school district. I'd also like to say thank you to the Bryan Group. Like everybody else has said, phenomenal candidates. I mean, truly, this is a very hard decision for everybody. Finally, I'd like to say thank you to the Board of Trustees to have me here again. It's been a great process to be involved with the interviews and all this, and I'm truly honored. I'd like to talk about the top two candidates that stood out to me, the Washoe County School District Student Voice Committee and the Washoe County School District Student Advisory Council. And these are Dr. Hobbs and Dr. Enfield, which is a pretty common, I think, amongst the public and the trustees. We really like the personality and compassion that Dr. Hobbs showed. I think that she personally touched each and every one of us during our last interview. I think we can all pretty much agree on that. And I think she'd make a good superintendent. However, on behalf of the Student Advisory Council, we truly think that Dr. Enfield is the best fit for Washoe County. She has innovative ideas that were realistic and achievable. During her interviews, she showed her dedication and desire to help Washoe County teachers, parents, staff, and students. She really made it important that we knew that she was here for all of us, not just one group. She's shown her commitment and desire to be a part of the school district and our community. Also, her experience as the only candidate who has actually been a public school superintendent is very valuable and will deeply benefit our district. In addition, Dr. Enfield has the largest amount of experience working with the state governments and legislature. Like you were saying, I think that that's super important, and I know that she'll work to fight for funding for us, as she says that she has a lot of experience doing, and I hope that she will. I truly believe that Dr. Enfield will make our district thrive, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Student Trustee Caden. Trustee Mayberry?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. Have some notes that I wrote. I didn't want to leave anything out. I do want to acknowledge a few folks, too. First, I do want to say I'm very mindful of my appointment back in November, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to serve alongside all of you. And I know this is probably one of the most important decisions I'll make on this board, and it's humbling, and I truly feel honored to be part of the process. Do want to recognize some folks, the Bryan Group. Thank you. You did the job we paid you to do. It's been a very comprehensive and transparent public process for a public CEO that I've ever experienced in my life. Also want to thank Emily Ellison and her team for their collaboration with Dr. Bryan. Also want to thank Michelle Anderson and the communications team for their efforts. It's no secret why we have 5 superior candidates, and that's a really good problem to have. So thank you very much. I also want to thank Superintendent Kristen McNeil for her service to our community and commitment to our students. And I want to thank all of you on the board. Sit alongside all of you. It's an honor, and I know it's weighed heavily on your minds. So thank you for your efforts. And finally, to Caprice and Sean and Susan, Sherelle, and Joan, thank you, if you're listening, for the privilege of your time and your strong desire to serve Washoe County Schools. In the short time I had with each of you, I learned a great deal, and I wish I could take some ingredients from all of you, sort of mix it up, make the best superintendent that possible, but it's not something that's possible. But I do appreciate all the things that you do and the roles that you play in making our nation great and a more perfect union. I have had some time to reflect and seek a lot of input from our community members and students and staffs and moms and dads and community members, and I've received a lot of input. And as a parent, I have thought a lot about my children and their education and who could best serve them. There's no doubt in my mind that Dr. Susan Enfield is the right candidate at this time to lead our district. I don't want to be too redundant. I'm going to hit the high points, but she was the only candidate that really talked about leading by example because our students are watching. She's also a realist, recognizes the times we live in. She's had success with her legislature. The education in Washington State, the education budget in Washington State has actually increased. She's the only candidate who's had a lengthy tenure as a superintendent of the public school system. When it comes to her record, I appreciate her courage. She's been a very vocal critic of government officials who've abdicated their responsibility when it came to COVID-19 and the public school systems. She's a vocal advocate for giving all children the devices and internet connections they need to succeed in this world. She's increased graduation rates in a pure urban school district to include all student groups and special education, and she's built a workforce that better reflects the community she serves. She's had a record of building community partnerships, as evidenced by the letter submitted in her application packet by a former CEO at the Alaska Airlines. And she has experience beyond the classroom and understands the day-to-day complexities of operating a school district. I would be honored for her to become part of our team of 8 and help us continue to move the academic needle in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Mayberry. I'll go to you next, Dr. Nicolette.
You betcha. Thank you. I, too, am going to start out with some thank yous. My colleagues, specifically, because this is a team effort, and I know that we, each of us, committed in our own way, and this was hard work. This was a true deep dive in thinking about our future. I want to thank the Bryan Group, absolutely. Thank you so much. Your methodology is interesting, and I believed in it. I questioned it at times, but my belief stayed strong because that just seemed like the right thing to do, and you came through, and I thank you for that. I want to thank the search advisory group. Oh my goodness sakes. I don't know how many hours they put in, maybe 100. I'm not sure, but that I think is probably a good guess from beginning to end. So thank you, search advisory group. Everything that happened, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for, how many were on it? 38, 37? Those people, we wouldn't be here today at this juncture if it wasn't for their hard group and your guidance, the Bryan Group. Thank you. I also want to thank Washoe County School District, the support staff. I'm not even going to start to name names because my guess is there's probably 25 people, and I would leave some out in trying to name them. So thank you very much for that. The student voice group, thank you so much. I think that you all know how we feel about the importance of hearing your voice, and we mean that and we believe that. And I want to thank the candidates, the 5 candidates. I want to thank everyone who applied. Thank you for that. And I want to thank the 5 candidates who put themselves out there because you're showing your heart and your soul and you're sharing your deep, dark thoughts and you're putting yourself in front of people who really want to do this right and really, put you in the hot seat. And I thank each one of our 5 candidates for that because that alone shows grit and desire. And those are 2 things that are very important, I believe. So I'm not going to talk about people specifically. It's not my approach, but I'm going to talk conceptually, all right? I listened for certain words, much like I did when we were appointing my 3 colleagues, is I listened for the word students, and I listened for student performance, student social emotional learning, the well-being and health of students, and how they go together. You can't take one away from the other. They go together. The mind, the heart, the soul, they go together. I listened for families and how families were talked about and stories that were shared. I listened for the different levels of employees, staffs, if you will, everything from, our teachers to our bus drivers, and I feel like I'm going to leave people out, custodians, our groundskeepers, our administrators. I listened for our candidates to mention those variety of groups, to tell me that they have an understanding of the complexity and the behemoth that is Washoe County School District. I listened for ideas and experience in the political arena, because we're coming up on another legislative session, and that aside, being able to understand the politics in Nevada are crucial. You need to be able to have the conversations. You need to be able to articulate the dreams and the visions for our school district. I listened for discussion of financing, and I will tell you that's the one term that I didn't hear a lot of. But the person that you'll have to wait for a minute, the person that mentioned it the most is my choice, because $1 billion budget, and we want to, in the political arena, seek more per pupil funding. A person's got to have a good grasp on that, right? You've got $1 billion budget and you want more money. We hear our public commenters talk about that. It's a valid discussion. I listened for operations, school operations, everything from, HR to our budget office to all the operations that go into making us who we are. I listened for the community involvement and how that is extremely important, to include our families. Because again, you know how I feel, families, parents, grandparents, whatever the dynamics, they are the first and forever teacher, and they are the expert. And I listened for that concept. I heard a lot of these concepts throughout the interviews, through the focus groups, what I call the meal chats. We each sat down with each one, and that was fun, because it actually gave them a chance to ask us questions about us too, because like President Taylor has said before, and it's true, we want them to want us just as much as we want them, because it's teamwork. And then all the documents that we reviewed, and more than once, I'm certain, because thank you, the Bryan Group, you do not do simple documents. The essential competencies alone, I almost felt at one point I never should have had any of my jobs, because I don't think I could have done them. But that was extensive work, and I thank you for that. The videos, the Zoom videos, the in-persons, the surveys. So there were so many components and so many things to, bring together to make sense and meaning. And again, I want to say thank you to all 5 of the candidates, delightful people. And Dr. Susan Enfield is the person that fits best in my mind and my heart. And when I think about Washoe County School District and its complexities and things that we have to work on, Dr. Susan Enfield is where I landed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nicolette. I'm going to go to Clerk Manetto, and then I'll bring up the rear.
Thank you, Madam President. And I cannot nearly say as eloquently the thank yous that she did, but it's thank you. And the community and the whole thing, it's amazing. Well, and I'm just going to say that I looked at longevity, if you hadn't guessed. And we only had one person who had one job in 10 years. And she was a superintendent for those 10 years, and she actually has school experience. So the one that rose to the top for me was Dr. Enfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Minetto. I'm smiling because I'm like, oh, that's always you. So short, so tight, so right there. Well, I do think it's appropriate to just concur some thank yous on behalf of the board. Really, of course, to the Bryan Group, I thank you often and will continue to do so. To Emily, you and your team, you're running people all around, all the inside, all the making sure we have copies and this and that, and the intermediaries and the millions of questions you would get from us to you, and then you would give them the bill. I mean, just all of that. It's a wonder that anything else got done in the HR department over these last few weeks. I really have to say a thank you to the community, to parents, who really jumped into this process and took advantage of every opportunity that there was to be involved. From the search advisory group that the Bryan team put together, to the focus groups, to the surveys, and even beyond the surveys, the emails, the text messages, the conversations, the phone calls, the hit me up in the parking lot at Rayleigh's, to whatever. And all that was okay at church. All of that. Hey, you guys get this. All of that. And I'm sure all of us had those same kinds of experiences in other places. To the students, Student Trustee Caton, thank you to you and your team, your colleagues, your peers, for really jumping into the process from the search advisory group on down. This really is more than anything else in the world. This is really about you. This is really about you. And certainly to my colleagues for wholeheartedly embracing this process and leaning in and clearing your calendars when we needed to clear our calendars, and staying up late and getting up early to read materials and be prepared and ask questions and challenge processes sometimes, right? When it was necessary to do so, and all of that. And then, of course, to the finalists. What an amazing field of finalists. Thank you. I know you're all listening. Thank you for putting yourself out there. Not an easy process at all to be scrutinized at such a high level in the community that cares so much, right? People express it in different ways and so on, but at the end of the day, that cares so much about it. So just really can't thank you enough. What an amazing field. I'm really honored, I think we all are, that we had just 5 outstanding candidates, probably more, but we only know of 5, right? That wanted to be here enough to put yourselves out there like that. That's a big sacrifice for you. And my job is not to say who I think is great. I think they're all great, but it's just a matter of who is the best fit for us where we are here right now. I'll just go alphabetically to State Superintendent Ebert, the professionalism, obviously the knowledge of Nevada and the commitment to Nevada. You call it Nevada home, and that always makes us feel good here in Nevada. You're a strong leader, legislative experience. I think it's always important to us, and you've had many years doing that. I'm speaking as if I'm talking to her, right? To Dr. Enfield, very experienced as shared here. The only sitting superintendent for a long time. One of the things I really liked, as well as is just the way that you talked about mistakes, what you learned from them. Also a strong leader from her. We talked about the longevity and the experience also legislatively, business-wise. Dr. Hobbs, what can you say? What can you not say about the personality, the inspiration, the warmth? I think the candor that she answered questions with, and even though sometimes her answers were very different than other people's answers, right? But to go ahead and do that, because this is how she felt, and I think that's important. Dr. Luxer, the innovative, what stands out to me is the innovation, how well read he is, extremely bright, very intelligent, very high level of exposure, and he did a TED Talk. That's pretty impressive. And then to Dr. Young, what stands out to me is the creative thinking, the diversity of her background, and her real desire to really get into this kind of public education. I looked at the 17 competencies. There are also 3 points in each, so there are 51 things to kind of keep in mind as I was going through things and who has what, because they're all good. I love what you said, Trustee Mayberry. If we can take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or a lot of this, a lot of that, because they had a lot. Right, and put them all together and looked at who aligned best with those 51. I kept hearing Dr. Bryan's voice in my head. Past experience is the best predictor of future experience. It doesn't mean it can't be different, but it's the best predictor of it. I looked for things like leadership, I love having an educational background. I think it's important. This job requires a strong leader. I looked at students and the interaction with the students. I looked at the organizational culture, and I looked at the challenges that we know we have with the legislature going forward, because there's some work that needs to be done there. I landed really on two, the same two as everyone else, Dr. Hobbs and Dr. Enfield, not a surprise. It's interesting because going in, I didn't know where I would land until they came to visit, and then you read all the stuff and so on. I'm gonna lean towards Dr. Enfield, and the reason why is because I think the depth of her experience is something that we need. We're in such a pivotal time. There are some things that we're all very proud of, and there are some things that we know we need to get to work on. And I think we've all been very open about that and need to. And I think the depth of that experience, I think, will help us as those decisions are made going forward. We need someone who has kind of been through some things. And not that any of them haven't, especially in particular Dr. Hobbs, she has as well. But sitting in that chair, been through some things that has really resonated with me. And again, back to being open about. Someone brought up the restorative justice, and she was open about how when she implemented it, she thought it was wonderful and it was great, and then she got all this pushback and didn't understand why, and then she figured out what it was, and then they made an adjustment. I like that. I like that, because no one's going to get everything right all the time. And what do you do when you make a mistake? That's the line. Not if you make a mistake. We're all going to make mistakes. But what do you do when you make one? And how do you recover? And she spoke about that. I am certainly mindful of whomever it is that we select. If the board changes even a little bit or even a lot of it, so to speak, right? The job of the superintendent is to implement the desires of the board. I don't have a doubt. I think all of them would do it, quite frankly. I'm certainly assured of it with Dr. Enfield, because she's been a superintendent for 10 years. I bet you her board has changed during that 10-year period of time. I bet you she's had some change. And so she's a pro at that. That's part of what happens. That's the job. You got to implement whatever the desires of the board are at that time. And so I think that I don't have a question as to whether or not that will be the case. And finally, the longevity. It would be great to have. I know this is the national average of a stay is 3 years. It'd be great to have more than that. And it would really give us a chance, much more of a chance to move forward. So that's kind of where I'm aligned this part going forward. So that being said, let's have some straw polls. Let's have some straw polls. They are not ballots. They are straw polls. No, we're just going to pick one. We just put a check mark by one. Put your name on it. Put your name on it, because it's important that we're going to say this publicly. Put your name on it. It says Trustee Blank. Your name goes there. Trustee Blank. Your name goes there. And then just put a check mark by just the top. There's no reason to go on the, okay, an X, a star, a heart, whatever. Okay, and then let's just take a 5-minute break. My clock says 5:10, 5:15, and that'll give an opportunity for council and JJ to go over it, and then we'll after 5 minutes we'll come on back. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We will reconvene, and we will just get back to agenda item 2.01, and we'll start with a reading of all of the votes, because we don't have private ballots or what have you, or straw polls here according to the Nevada Open Meeting Law. So please, JJ.
Trustee Church selected Dr. Hobbs. Trustee Mayberry selected Dr. Enfield. Trustee Minetto selected Dr. Enfield. Trustee Nicolette selected Dr. Enfield. Trustee Rodriguez selected Dr. Enfield. Trustee Smith selected Dr. Enfield. Trustee Taylor selected Dr. Enfield. So we have 6 trustees selected Dr. Enfield as their top choice, and 1 trustee selected Dr. Hobbs.
Thank you. Oh, excuse me. I got baritone, huh? Sorry. Thank you very much, JJ, and thank you all for for the participation in that. So that was a straw poll. That does not qualify as a motion, and so if it is the pleasure of the board, the motion will be in order at this time. And I will say this: I see your light on Trustee Smith. Trustee Smith is, and Trustee Rodriguez is ready for the set. He beat you. He beat you. You got. So we'll have a motion, and I will say this as a motion. I was just reminded by counsel that which should be included, should we get to this point, and we're at this point in the motion, should be that whatever the motion will be, it's obvious, subject to negotiation and approval by the board of a negotiated contract. And then once we can talk more about that, because I know you have some questions, Trustee Church, as we get to the contract part. It looks like that's the direction that we're going in. And I will say, just as we let's before we have any discussion at all. I know your light was on as JJ was reading names. Your light was on, Trustee Smith. So we'll go ahead and go to you.
Thank you, Madam President. This has been a long and thorough process, and as a result of the strong poll, I believe I'd like to get right to it. And so I would like to make a motion.
Please.
With great honor and anticipation, I move that the Board of Trustees selects Dr. Susan Enfield as the next Superintendent of Schools for the Washoe County School District, subject to the negotiation with the board.
Okay,
and approval of the final contract.
Does that meet? Yes. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Oh, there's a light on.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor from Trustee Smith. There's a second from Trustee Rodriguez. This will be a time if there's any discussion. Okay, a discussion, Trustee Church?
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, as I'm sitting here, I still haven't positively decided how I'm going to vote on this, but I'd just like to point out that we spent a lot of money on this search. If for some reason she doesn't take it, maybe she went somewhere else or whatever, then I hope we don't have to go through this process again, that we stick with the other candidates.
And I would just, as a comment, probably as one trustee, I don't think the search is dead or over. We've all talked about how strong the field has been, and if the wheels fall off, so to speak, I would like to think we kind of pick it back up and kind of go. I would like to think, and we'll go from there. So, okay. Any other comments, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Opposition?
Nay.
Okay, the motion is carried. Look, the motion carries. At the record show, it is 6-1. It is 6-1, and so congratulations. I get the honor of making a phone call right after a meeting, and I would like to think everyone's watching, but so answer when I call, whatever camera's on. I'll get a chance to do that, and I will say this: just as we make this motion and we get ready for agenda item 2.02. I would be remiss if I didn't look at our sitting superintendent with great respect and appreciation and admiration for all that you've done, how you've led us through some unprecedented things that's never come our way in education before, whether it's COVID, whether it's how you transition into being the interim superintendent and then the superintendent and then COVID and then such polarization in our own community as well as in our state and in our country, leading through a time of recovery, labor, things that we have just never had before. You have been steadfast. You have been committed. You have not at any time shortchanged or cheated this district, because you're on your way to a well-deserved retirement after 30 years. So I just want to say thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for making a decision.
I think if it was 4-3, she would have been there. Beaten on. Yeah, that's a different kind of tier. That's a different kind of tier.
We've got a lot of work to do. Short period of time.
So let's go to, and there are plenty of questions around this and timing, a lot of things that need to go forward. Thank you all for coming, who've come in. Thanks for all, just as we segue into transition into agenda item 2.02. Thank you for being involved in such a really important process, and I think we're all looking forward to a better way forward, a stronger way forward. When there is a change, things should get better. Period. When there is a change, things should get better. And there's no indictment on anybody or bodies, right? Whatever may happen, board and so on. But when there is a change, things should get better. And we're all looking forward to just charting a new course going forward for our district and for the 70,000 plus people that are counting on us, as well as our entire community. So, and I bet you, Dr. Bryan, look, they're gone. They're in the car. They're on the Mount Rose already. They're going. They might have a helicopter out there to just get straight. They're out. Deuces. Okay. I don't blame them. What a process. So now let's get to agenda item 2.02, discussion and possible action to determine the initial contract terms to be offered to the candidate selected as superintendent of schools, to include the addition of language regarding mediation proceedings, determination of a start date, term of agreement, annual salary, performance bonus, and vehicle expense allowance. This is for God bless you. This is for possible action. And then our chief HR officer is before us, and I will say the vast majority, if not all of these things, as a board, we have already discussed and determined. So it's just a matter of reviewing those things and making it in alignment. We don't have to start from scratch on those things. So, Ms. Ellison?
Thank you, President Taylor. I was going to start with that. So we did the bulk of this work back at the end of February. There were some minor changes to be made, taking out his, her, turning it into the right pronouns. So, and then Counselor Hall added some language around mediation that would be beneficial to the board. So I'm going to let him walk you through those changes that start on page 8, and then we'll work through any questions that you have related to those changes. Once that language is finalized, we'll come back and fill in the blanks for salary, vehicle allowance, etc.
I'm going to keep this pretty short. You requested that we add mediation language to it and that I tighten up the section regarding termination. I looked at the communications with the prior superintendent's litigation and used some of the arguments that were made there to tighten this up. And so the changes here really haven't changed much of the substance. I think it just made it cleaner. Am I not leaning close enough?
Thank you.
Thank you. Made it cleaner. We're keeping much of the same language that you see cut from section C, 8C, was simply cut and then moved down.
Can we go to a page so we can follow?
Yes, that is page
Thank you.
9. And that was moved down in this to page 11, and that's where we add the mediation. So I put all of the language that deals with termination in one place. Here's the remedy, and the remedy requires mediation first. And so that was the real substance of those changes.
Thank you, Counsel. One thing I will say that we get when we get Counsel Anthony Hall is his area of expertise is in contracts and personnel and labor law. So those, I'm sure those are strong recommendations that help the district.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is something, when I looked at it, I don't see big holes. This looks like a well put together employment contract, and as you mentioned, I do employment contracts all the time, so I think you're looking at a solid contract here.
Fantastic. Good to hear. Ms. Ellison, anything else you want to share with us on this? Or we've done this, we reviewed it, that was the only change, but if anyone has any other questions or comments, we can take them at this time. Trustee Church?
Yeah, I've read it. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a legal beaver kind of person. I read detail, and especially with the mediation, I'm good with it. My only fear, as we've seen elsewhere in other agencies, is that we're not in the negotiation. If the applicant candidate comes in and says, oh, I don't want this, I want that, I guess Ms.
Ellison.
Emily Ellison.
Oh, I'm sorry, is your mic on, sir? I can't tell.
Yeah, I guess
okay.
Ms. Ellison will walk that tightrope and then bring it back to the board. Hopefully that's not going to happen, and if it does, I guess we deal with it when it does. And that would be the only glitch that I could see.
I think that's a good point. And one thing I would say is that Dr. Bryan has been reviewing the contract with the candidates. So there should be no surprises. So I wouldn't anticipate, hey. I mean, you never know, right? Because sometimes it's in theory, and now it's in practice. It might, but generally there shouldn't be a significant issues because it isn't something that's new. Ms. Ellison?
And I would just support that. That's one of the primary reasons for getting as much of the language as we can finalized prior to identifying finalists, so that folks know what the nature of the offer is that they're pursuing. In terms of next steps, if there was a counteroffer, I believe that I would agendize that and bring that information back to you. I think, and this is my first time kind of getting this far in the process too, I think I would ask for Dr. Enfield and her representative, if applicable, to be present for that discussion. Really, it would be me agendizing it, but them negotiating with the board. So, but again, I don't anticipate any big surprises because the terms have largely been clarified and provided to the candidates ahead of time.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Nicolette and then Trustee Smith.
It's just I'm curious as to, is there a timeline? Let's say we get all through this tonight, we move forward. Is there going to be like they have a week to decide, a month to decide? What does that look like? What are you thinking?
I think the board meetings give us nice increments to work in, right? So I think sort of the ideal situation would be that we are able to work through the details and bring the contract to approval at the next meeting. But if we couldn't, then we'd be looking to the meeting beyond that.
Thank you very much. Trustee Smith and then Trustee Mayberry.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't know if this is the right time, but if in our discussions with Dr. Enfield, should the board agree and should the superintendent agree, I would like to see if there was an opportunity to create as much overlap between Dr. Enfield's beginning time and then also time to spend with Superintendent McNeil. Again, I defer that to the superintendent and to this body, but I would like to see as much overlap as is reasonably possible.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. That was a conversation, as you may recall, that we all had early on. I think that was Trustee Church who really wanted to make sure that was a part as we move forward and looking at where we are from a timing standpoint and so on. One of the advantages that certainly didn't drive anything, but Dr. Enfield had already shared with her board that it was time for her to move on, if you will, right? And so I don't know if that makes it easier or because they knew something was going on, or not, versus if there's a superintendent that they hadn't even started because they didn't know if this person was going to go anywhere. So that might make it easier. I mean, I think it would be great if we can make something happen, say June 1. Then you have a month of overlap, and that's a month of time, to tie things up on that end. But we just won't know until we make that phone call and have that conversation. But I think in the conversation, I certainly, because that was a part of our previous conversation, and people are nodding here as well as in the phone call. Whenever there is an acceptance, whether it's tonight or whether she says, "Hey, can I have a day or two or whatever?" Then that will be the next part of it. And when would you like to begin? The board would like to. See if you can't begin as early as possible, certainly by June 1, have that conversation.
So in that vein, my recommendation would be that the motion be to have the candidate start as soon as possible, and then as I work with her to understand the parameters of her current contract and what's possible, then we might work with Counselor Hall to add some additional language about this sort of intermediary period prior to the official contract year, okay. Right? So maybe she can come on the weekends or something, and we would be working out if it needs to be creative in some way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so the motion should leave that open then, and that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that gives the board the most flexibility. That way we don't have to come back to get approval for a new date and then bring the contract back.
Well, that way when I make the phone call, it's like, this is what the board would like. I can be even more specific in that, so to have that flexibility. So. Okay. Trustee Mayberry, you had something, and Trustee Church?
Trustee Smith took it right out of my mouth. If that was a motion, I would have seconded. So I would love to have the new superintendent have some face time with our current superintendent, too. That's extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Church?
And again, my only concern is the contract has a lot of blanks in it. My recollection, looking at the record, is the salary was offered $275,000 to $310,000 per year with benefits and performance incentives subject to negotiation, as well as the length of the contract. So those are still.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, in other words, there's a lot of negotiation that the staff is going to have before it comes back to us. I think.
Well, part of the process tonight is that we have to fill in some of those blanks. So
I was just going to say, I was going to say, I think we need to do that, right? Yeah, I think we need. So, I mean, that's a good point. We want to make sure we get that and nail that. So that there certainly won't be a secret on what we're offering because we're going to talk about it right now.
So I think the first decision to be made is the effective date, and it sounds like the discussion is as soon as possible, but again, I'll leave that all to you. The term of the agreement is the next decision, and then salary and performance bonus. So the primary decisions are outlined on page 2 of the contract.
So if we'll all go to page 2 of the contract, you see the highlighted dates. We've already spoken about effective date, when we'd like for it to begin. I think absolutely. Yeah, wouldn't you think one by one? These, yeah, I would think so, just to make it super, super clear. And we've discussed the effective date. So should we go ahead and, since we're going to do it one by one, why don't we memorialize that, if you will, in terms of a motion from an effective date?
I would like to add to that.
Okay,
May I,
please.
As soon as possible is just a little too squishy for me, but I understand how we have to be careful. I'm wondering if we can, as soon as possible, no later than June 13th, to kind of give a, I'm thinking of the board and everything that Dr. Enfield will have to do to kind of, shore up her people. That sounds terrible, but in the community and have friendly, kind exit. And so I think 2 months, that's not even 2 months, that's a month and a half, is even a little pushy, but it's what I think we need. Just my thought.
Okay. We're on effective date, so looking for a motion, whatever the pleasure of the board is. Would you like to make that a motion, Dr. Nicolette?
I would. I move that the effective date of this agreement is as soon as possible and no later than Monday, June 13th, 2022.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, the motion on the floor that it's as soon as possible, but no later than June 16th. That's approximately 6 weeks. June 13th. I'm sorry, approximately 6 weeks from where we are today.
That's a federal holiday.
Oh, that's June 16th. Is it federal?
13th.
June 13th. What is it?
Juneteenth. That's the 19th.
That's the 19th. It's the 19th. Yes, the 19th. It's close. It's new. It's all right. It's new. It's new. So okay.
There is a Monday holiday.
Yeah, there is but it's the next Monday, right? It's the one closest. Okay. Okay. So, so there's a motion on the floor that the effective date be as soon as possible, but no later than Monday, June 13th, 2022. There was a second to that motion from Trustee Mayberry. Discussion. Trustee Church?
For discussion, yes, I'm a yes vote, but this is awkward telling them we're representing the taxpayer interest, and yet we're doing this in a public forum, and when we get down to salary, it's going to be really awkward. But I want to make clear what I think I understand. If Ms. Enfield comes back and says, I just can't possibly make it till July 1, then we can come back to the board and say that's fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not like if you don't like it, don't apply. Yeah.
My understanding, please correct me if my understanding is we're putting in here what we want,
yes,
so to speak, as a board, what our preferences are and so on, but it's subject to some negotiation, which is what council made sure was in that first motion. Yes.
I'm going to say that's slightly different. It's what motion you make. So at the end of this, if you make the motion along the lines of we approve the contract with the specifics that have been voted through, subject to negotiation, then that's exactly that.
Okay.
If you instead vote that it is a hard line, here's what you're signing or not, then that would be the instructions.
Okay.
But as long as the vote is that, then that's exactly correct.
So what we will do is identify it item by item as we're discussing, and then just similar to how we do with policy, we make the changes as we go in the policy change, and then we vote on the entire policy as changed. We would do that same thing, and then at that point it should be subject to negotiation, and that gives us that flexibility on Dr. Infield's side. Okay.
So does that motion need to be amended to add that subject to negotiation?
No, not until the end.
Okay.
Not until the very end. Correct, Counsel?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So there is a motion on the floor. You're covered? Your light was on?
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep this simple so an Army guy can understand.
Okay.
So this is this initial, right? The odds are this is probably go to her attorney or whatnot. This is all
Absolutely.
just preliminary. Like this is what we like, and we're
Exactly.
probably
That-
bargain back
yep,
and forth.
absolutely.
Okay, I
and
thought so.
that's why council said at the very end we want to approve it as changed, subject to negotiation.
Understood. Yeah, kind of it was getting confusing there for me. I thought that's what we're doing. So
All right, so we're good? Okay, so there's a motion on the floor that the effective date be as soon as possible, but no later than Monday, June 13th, 2022. Yes.
I have one question since I've never done this before. Will the public comment be before we make the final motion at the very end of this? Or is there public comment?
Why don't we do public comment now? Okay, that's very, okay, is there public comment on the contract?
We have no public comment
On the
for this
contract.
item.
Okay, all right, thank you. I was going to do it at the end, but it makes sense to do it now. Okay. All right, any further discussion on the effective date? All right, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? All right, the motion's carried. Let the record show it is unanimous. Now we're looking at the term of the contract.
So there is a limitation in statute that the contract can be no more than 4 years. A typical contract for an initial superintendent term is 3 years. But of course, the board has discretion. I would say from a recruiting and human resources perspective, you've got a candidate who's moving, you've got a substantial, learning curve, learning a new community in a district of our size. So while I know that 1-year contracts might be appealing, they certainly have less appeal to candidates. And I would encourage you to consider that in your conversations.
Thank you, Ms. Ellison. Trustee Smith?
Thank you, Madam Taylor. We know from our trustee training at the Nevada Association of School Boards, among others, that superintendents need at least 3 years to really see effective change based on their leadership. So personally, I would only be comfortable with a 3 or a 4-year term.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Smith. Trustee Mayberry?
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing. I would prefer a 3-year term as well. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Church?
Yeah, I was almost going to try and beg for a 30-month, which would be a compromise of 2.5 years, but I see what the board's intentions are. The good news in here is there are lots of stipulations for termination with cause that would void that, so I can live with it.
Thank you, Trustee Church. So is there going to be a motion on the floor then to that effect, a 3-year or 4-year? Trustee Mayberry?
Yeah, I'll be happy to make a motion if that's the pleasure of the board, Madam President.
Looks like it.
Okay. So I'll move that the term of the agreement, do you want me to be specific with the date?
No, just, I
Okay.
think if you just say,
The
right,
term of
Counsel?
the agreement will be a 3-year agreement for the new superintendent.
Could we just clarify that it's
Sure.
3 full school years, starting with the 22-23 school year?
Okay, I'll move to approve.
Well,
this-
hang on, if I may, wait, because I think we're about to say the same thing. If we start in June, it's that's the end of the previous June. If we start June 1, like we agreed that we wanted to do,
So
right?
maybe say through the end of the, what would that be, 25 school year? 24, 25
Maybe
school
some
year?
date from there, because otherwise we missed that
Right,
month.
we missed,
So.
and I was trying to avoid that, right? I was trying to avoid having the contract end in
Right,
the
and
end
the
of
random,
May of
right,
2025.
Right.
So.
Is that where you were going, Trustee Church? Did I?
Yeah, I just, to me, 3 years was 365 plus leap year times 3. And I really don't see us, if everything's going well, I don't see the superintendent leaving a month before the school year's up, or whatever that comes out to, but just let me know what the motion is so I can decide.
If I may.
So Trustee, are you still in the motion? We don't have a second, so there's no motion on the floor as of right now. We're still working it out.
Well, if you want to provide, yeah, I have a simple idea. Just keep it simple, June 13, 2022 to 2025. That was going to be my motion.
Okay.
But if you want to.
If that's a motion, I second.
Okay.
Well, don't say June 13th, because we said as soon as possible, no later than June 13th.
Very good. So let's keep it.
So may we say should we say something like from as soon as possible, from the start date as negotiated through June 30th, 2025? Does that cover that?
2025.
Because that way, if Dr. Infield says, "Hey, great, I can come June 8th," or whatever, or June 1st, it's still through the school, and that's just it's customary for it to be through a school year. That's just customary.
Yep. June 30th.
Okay, so there was not a second, so still looking for a motion. I see you're working on it.
So I'll
Trustee
just
Mayberry?
say, move to approve the term of the agreement from the negotiated start date for a period of 3 years.
No, we need to have we need to have a date, right, council?
Right here.
We do have to have an end
Right
date?
here.
Yes.
Right here.
Would it be June? Okay, June 30th. So let me restate that. Move to approve this agreement to negotiate a start date till June 30th, 2025.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor. Is there a second? There's a second. Got a two-finger nod from Trustee Rodriguez. And what this allows is, if Dr. Enfield can begin before the end of this school year, that's like bonus time, kind of, if you will, right? There's bonus time because that's at our request, and then it's still in effect is a 3-year contract.
Yep.
Okay, clear? Do we cover that, council? All right. Looks like we're good. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Right, the motion carries. Record show it is unanimous. Now to the salary. We'll look to you, Emily. Remind us, what was the range we agreed upon?
The previously approved range was $275,000 to $310,000 per year for base salary.
Okay. Yeah, that's say it in the Trustee Smith.
Thank you. Can we keep the range? Because I know that there's a degree of negotiation that takes place after this. So do we set an exact target, or is it allowed upon this body to give you a range to work with?
Because I'm not the one actually doing the negotiations, I'm really just the intermediary between the board and the candidate. I think it would be most appropriate to pick a specific number because I really don't have the authority to negotiate with this person.
May I ask, who does the negotiating on our behalf? Is it council?
I was going to serve as the middleman, but if you would like to, you're more than welcome.
Well, no, who
to.
does it? Who does? Someone's got to negotiate for us. JJ, you're going to comment?
If I recall, in the past, it was the board leadership team generally acted as that.
Oh, okay. Council?
Yeah, you guys can direct an individual like myself or a group of us to do that. Or you could, as JJ just indicated, have the executive team involved. Again, this is a board pleasure who's going to do the negotiation.
Clerk Manetto? No, I saw this mic. I'm like, which mic is yours? Okay, yes, Clerk Manetto.
Thank you, Madam President. So this is base salary we're talking. This is
just base
gross.
salary.
This is not benefits.
No.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
Just base salary.
Just base salary. If I go ahead,
And
Council.
I was just going to add, if the decision of the board is going to be to appoint, for example, me and Emily to head up the negotiations, I think my preference would be to have a range of salaries because there might be some give and take as we go forward with some of the other terms instead of just a single set number. So I know that's slightly different than what
Make sure you're mic.
I know that's different than what Ms. Ellison just said, but just from a negotiation standpoint, that might be a better way to do it.
So that might, thank you, Council. That may be in response to what your question was,
And I
Trustee
think,
Smith.
I think if
Ms.
we,
Ellison?
I think if we go with that model, which is perfectly acceptable, I would look to recuse myself from that process because it is a little unusual to be involved in the negotiations for
With your
my
boss.
soon-to-be boss.
Yes, no, that's which is part of why we bring in an outside. Absolutely. So the conversation, and I see Trustee Church. The conversation, the consideration, I guess I should say is that we ask board counsel to represent us in negotiations, and that we stay with that salary range that was already agreed upon as a board. That's the consideration at this time. Trustee Church.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. We got a whole lot of yellow spots on our contract, everything from performance goals to vehicle. So and rather than do it here in public, and I'm missing the Padre game, not that that's important, but rather than do it in public here, because it's kind of awkward, that would seem like the logical choice. And my question would be, would the board president be interested in being a party to that or not? And then everything comes back to us anyway. So, I mean, they can't negotiate anything final. It all comes back to us. But I'm comfortable basically just Mr. Hall knows the parameters in conjunction with the board president, if you want to put your time and effort into it.
Well, it's the pleasure of the board. I've done it before with the board president and board vice president. Does that make it the subcommittee of the board if we do that, or?
I think it was.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I was thinking that through. Yeah, if we have the president and the vice president with authority to negotiate subject to approval, we shouldn't be in violation of open meeting laws, so that should be something we can do effectively without any legal violation.
Okay, then that might be if you consider it, and that way just someone else is involved in it as well, so it isn't just two heads are better than one, kind of a thing, and I've done that before with the previous contract negotiation, and then to work through it, and then that whole thing comes back. So the consideration then would be, and the consideration then would be that really the range was set, and the rest of these details. I think, don't let me put words in your mouth, Trustee Church, okay? Would be worked out with council and the board president and vice president involved in those conversations and negotiations to bring back here to the board for final approval. That's a consideration. I see some. You want to respond to that? Because I see some lights.
I'm just one trustee, but because otherwbut we got to fill in all the.
We'll be here all night.
Don't be in the front page of the paper saying I want to see the Padre game. I can watch it on video. But, yeah, I feel comfortable with that just as one trustee.
Well, the thing what it does is it creates some ranges in there, and the important thing is that it has to come back here for final approval anyway, and I would think that myself as board president and vice president Nicolette, because we've gone through this, we have kind of the tenor of what the board would like, and it'll be our best work to stay within those parameters to the extent that we can. So.
May I comment just
briefly?
Oh, please. I just want to point out that we do still have some decisions to make tonight because there were not ranges set for performance bonus or vehicle allowance. And the vast majority of the yellows that have to be filled out here are the person's name. So we can just do a find and replace. The remaining decisions would be, motions and actions would be around base salary, the range for performance bonus, and then a range or amount for vehicle allowance.
I think we can do that again. We can. I think that's kind of part of. You want to have some stuff to negotiate with.
But you haven't set any ranges for those. So, do you want to provide guidance?
Well, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. As vice president, 2 minds are definitely better than 1, but 7 are better than 2. And so I believe we can punch this out rather quickly, given our methodology of having a salary range. If we do a range of percentage, that bonus, I wrote down 5 to 9. If we do a range of a vehicle allowance, we call that vehicle expense allowance, and we do, I don't know, 450 to 650. We do a range, then we've kind of created a pattern of negotiation, and I would personally like your input. Just saying.
Okay, Trustee Rodriguez.
I hear you say, Dr. Nicolette. Thank you, Madam President. I think a lot of this is left to legal, honestly. I feel that the board leadership and our council has the idea and the pulse of the feelings, and I agree with Trustee Church. Like, we got a very marketable superintendent to be, and I trust you guys to lock her in with whatever it is, and again, it will come back to us for approval, final approval. So, I mean, I'm really down to whatever lawyer stuff has to go on between us and Dr. Enfield.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say the only caution that I would provide is without ranges and without some sort of understanding, you could get into a situation, which I think you all were concerned about, where it comes back to the board and the board is not in support because it's way outside of a range that one or more of you were thinking about. So I think if I was going into negotiations, I'd want to have at least some parameters to work with versus no parameters, because then I think you create the risk of it not being in line with someone's expectations.
Well, what I would say on that is just, if I may, is that because we have someone who is an expert in this, we'll be able to have some information about because right now we can come up with the range, but we want to be competitive market-wise. We don't have that information. That'll give us an opportunity to have that information. And in my mind, anyway. I mean, it's that should be a part of the conversation. Is what's out there? Who else is getting paid what in our community, whatever the case may be, or similar positions and so on. Right now, we're just blind right now. and I shouldn't say blind, but you know what I mean. We have no parameters. We're just gonna make something up, but based upon what? That's my feeling, and I want to make sure that we're competitive, right? And that we don't overspend, right? We come up with something that's way more than we need to have. I mean, no offense, Dr. Enfield, but we don't want to. I mean, that's my take. When I was involved in this before, we had some market information that helped drive the conversation as we were negotiating. And then you can say, hey, this is what's happening in our community. This is what's happening in superintendents for like-size districts, and so on. And that right now, I feel a little less equipped to do that right now because I don't have that information. In my mind, that's just from my own experience. Council, and then Trustee Mayberry.
I echo your thoughts on that, President. I think that if we have some discretion and leave it as we already have, that will allow us to talk to staff, get some data, and see where that final number is. And some of these work together. For example, if Dr. Enfield wants a much higher level at the salary range, if we research and find that the total compensation should be a little lower, or she's close to that, we might have to do lower on the performance bonus, or vice versa. Because those two things relate to each other to get to total compensation. So giving us the ability to do some research, look at norms, talk to staff would, I think, help us in that respect.
I would feel better with that. I understand the heads, there's no question, but we just don't have any parameters. And whatever we come up with as a board, we want to be able to explain to the community, hey, this is where we landed, and this is what else is going on in the market. This is why it's important to be here. And we want to feel good about whatever we go forward with to Dr. Enfield. And without any information, I have less assured. That's just my own personal experience and my personal view. I think we owe that due diligence. So, Trustee Mayberry?
No, thank you, Madam President. I was just going to echo that. My comfort level is just sort of pumping the brakes on some of these big ticket items. Let us have some time to get this right, like we did the last several weeks with the superintendent. I'm not real comfortable talking about a range publicly either. I think we're showing our cards, and why wouldn't the other party pick the highest range? So I have a lot of confidence in you and the Vice President and the Council to sort of move forward and bring this back, some of those big ticket items at a latter meeting.
Well, I think what I think will be important is as we, and I appreciate that. And this is a good conversation. This is what we got to do is a part of making whatever recommendations or whatever draft contract that may come back is gathering the data to support that. I think that should be, to me, I'd prefer to have that in the motion. And then it's clear that the board is saying, hey, let's gather some data so that we have some research on whatever it is that we land in within those ranges and whatnot. Yes.
I can
Dr.
concur
Nicolette?
with that, and I just want you to know that I did do some research. So I didn't just pull those numbers out of my ear, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But pleasure of the board. I'm on board with you.
Thanks, Dr. Nicolette.
Would you like a motion?
Please.
I make a motion that the board authorizes the board council, board president, and board vice president to enter into negotiations with the future superintendent and bring all items back to the board for approval, including those parameters that have already been established tonight.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Church. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I'm just going to ask a question of clarity. So what should really, so that's the data we've gathered, the data we've made some recommendations, had some conversations with Dr. Enfield and so on, and then comes back to the board with the data. Is that I want to make sure I understand the intention.
In other words, we already had some motions that we made, so I want to make sure those are honored. And then basically, hopefully you come back, hopefully it's a slam dunk. I mean, you talk, we're done in a day, you come back and we approve it. I mean, hopefully. So not really come back with the data, but come back with
but the data should support it, though. I think that's okay.
Yeah, with a proposal.
Yeah, and the reason I just say that because Dr. Nicolette has some information that the rest of us don't have, and it's going to help us make the best decision. And then that way the public knows it. Right? I think if they come back with some data that makes it very transparent, I think that's important. Okay, and then should we say to the next board meeting?
Yeah, I thought about that, and I thought I'd give you a little leeway.
I think we got to, let's get going. We want somebody here.
We want it ASAP, but if, I don't want to pin you down. If
Maybe
it
as soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
Is that a friendly that you're?
Yeah, I make a motion. I
You just
amend the
a friendly
motion to say
amendment?
as soon as possible.
Okay, trustee. Okay, so we have a friendly amendment to add as soon as possible, and then that way, hopefully, it can be there. But if not, our hands are not tied. And, okay, I appreciate that. Okay, any further discussion? Council, you feel okay? We're.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, Ms. Ellison. Okay, you're like, as long as I'm not doing it, right? All right, all those in favor of the motion as amended, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? All right, the motion is carried, and let the record show it is unanimous. I think that's important to bring it back like that. So, and then now we need to know. Yes.
Did we need to do public comment?
Should we? Are we doing public comment on each? I think we did. We did public comment on the contract.
Okay.
Yes, we did. We did public comment on the contract. Yes, we did. Yes. Thank you, though. Good call. You guys, you got to watch me. Yeah, no. We did, but I appreciate it. Okay, so now we need a motion as a whole to accept the contract, in terms as we, right? Didn't you say we needed to do that as a whole? Not with it being open like that.
Not with the way we just modified it. No.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. So all that will happen when it comes back. Yeah. Okay. So then we don't need that. All right. So that concludes agenda item 2.02 then. All right. Thank you. Now we will have our closing public comment.
Pablo Nava Duran.
Welcome back, Mr. Duran.
So here we go. So I want to say thank you for selecting new superintendent. I know this is a really difficult decision, but you got to pick a white superintendent. I want to thank the blind group for that. So I'm very thankful for that. And I got Legion. I got no public comment on this time. But by the way, I do have it. So we know what happened in Las Vegas in Clark County School District. There was an increase of school violence across the Clark County, and many of trustees, superintendent, were very responsive. They give up. The only thing to do is give up the press, and that's it. There's no immediate response. And give up thought and prayer. Really, thought and prayer on the school violence. Students need to mental health cancer. Not the teacher are not cancer or social worker. They need like social emotional support, all kinds of stuff, because many of Clark County students are low-income students, and they rely on their needs, and also sometimes their parents were abusive, sometimes not. But we want to make sure the Washington County School District do not end up like Clark County School District. Also, I know Nevada went for nice education because of funding per student is very low, about 10%. And also, I'm going to say that Nevada is, for Washington County, is improving, but at state of Nevada, not really, because more than 70% of students live in one county, is Clark County School District. You got to bring up trustee and superintendents for that, so you want to end up Clark County, I think like we should like just that to add a special meeting about the school violence. We have to like a bit discipline. Like if a student need to have a passion, so to learn have a consequence, and you want to like we don't want to end up many Washington County parents to opt their student out and then leave for charter school or private school. That's a priority because public education is a key. It's essential for students to have a successful, and you want to end up for that. So if a student who are welcome to ask a question, they need to be separated, and you want to hear that. Also, hopefully the new superintendent will have like curriculum stay open so the public should review it. Also, if a school violence, I think like we have I think the school violence is very good. Other than environmental school, it's very good so far. So that's a clear mind. Like I just had to have a special meeting about school violence up there, schools out and student cover content. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duran.
Mike Krogan.
Welcome, Mr. Krogan.
Thank you. It's good to be here. My name is Mike Krogan. I'm a resident of Reno, and like everybody, I think, in this room, a taxpayer. I don't resent that. I'm kind of reluctant to speak to you because I know that you get your share of lecturing from people who think they know how to run schools. But I would like to remind you of something as you consider policy over the next many months. Washoe County School District is a public school district. It's not a Christian school district. It's not a gay school district. It's not a straight school district. It's not a Republican school district. It's not a Democratic or a Socialist school district, much to my dismay, but that is what it is. It is a public school district. And like it or not, the public in this particular country is made up of white folks, Christians, Muslims, atheists. It's made up of BSM people. It's made up of queers and others who are undecided as to what they are. They all make up the public. And therefore, the schools, as public schools, need to give them proper representation and equity and justice, even if it has to be a restorative kind of justice. I think as public school officials and citizens, we need to support our public schools and understand that all of these groups I've mentioned and more should be able to learn in schools a mutual regard with Christian white Europeans, Americans, bad boys and girls, girls who and bad boys who disrupt. Ain't nobody know them better than me because that's how I spent my years in education. Disrupting and then turning into a teacher of disruptive kids. And the other ones that we worry about, the quiet, withdrawn boys and girls who hide and spend their time looking for better places to hide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krogan.
John Eppolito.
Welcome back, Mr. Eppolito.
Thank you. My name is John Eppolito. I'm a former K-12 teacher. And I have had kids in Washoe County School District continuously since 2003. I'm glad I only have one more year left. In my opinion, I've seen the quality of education in our district deteriorate since 2003 because too much time is spent on things like social emotional learning, comprehensive sex ed, social justice, critical race theory, Common Core, that includes math that would confuse Einstein, no cursive, and in some teachers' rooms, LGBTQ and BLM issues. At the Worcester Forum, the superintendent candidates had a question for me, and 4 of them had it presented to them about Infinite Campus and SANE, and how Infinite Campus was the most massive database ever created on students. In both of those databases, the data lives forever. Of the 4 candidates who were asked the question, only 1 seemed confused and really didn't understand the question. Unfortunately, that was Dr. Enfeld. Ms. Joan Ebert, she actually said everything that the author wrote on the question was true. Unfortunately, she hasn't really done anything about it at the State Superintendent of Public Instruction's office that I know of. You can see that on our Facebook page at Protect Nevada Children. And, you know, my comments before about the school district and all the far left ideology that's going on in the classroom, I would be just as adamantly opposed if it was all far right ideology going on in the classroom. We don't spend enough time educating kids. We spend enough time doing everything else. When we all went to school, it was a lot different. It's not like that anymore, and I think it should be like it used to be. My oldest son, who went to Ivy League, got a better education than my younger kids are getting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ippolito.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, JJ. You have something, Council? Oh, no, okay. All right, everyone, thank you for the great work. Thank you for this, getting to the end of a really comprehensive process for everyone, and now we can all look forward together. I'm going to call Dr. Enfield. If you get a call from me tonight, that's a bad sign. Yeah, something bad happens, I'm going to call you. So if you get a call, I know you already told me, Jeff. You already told me you're afraid when I call you because you know something bad happened. But it'll be a pleasure to make the phone call, and then we just begin the work as directed from you, and as soon as possible, just get wrapped up so we can get to work. So, congratulations for all of us. Thank you. We're adjourned.